Welcome to Game Zero, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
Hey Kira, so I'm Kyle, and I wanted to ask, have you ever played Wolfenstein?
No, what's it about?
Oh, it's a really good game, especially ever since the series got rebooted.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to talk to you about today was about, how there's there's this evil empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's many countries around the world, but they all essentially serve the empire, whether directly or indirectly, right? And everyone lives under it and has to do what the people in power of this empire say or want. And
all right.
It's pretty bad in many parts of the world, but their totalitarian oppression is pretty extreme, particularly in like Southern America, for example, where you have people like the KKK being overtly racist, and the empire sympathizes with them. They have these uniformed troopers that do their will, and these troopers sympathize with the KKK, letting them off easy on anything they do, sympathizing with what they want, that is, power for white people and racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just doesn't go the same for any poor people, which tend to be people of color in the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially since we're talking about Southern America, that tends to be black people specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So not only will the KKK be bad to them, the troopers will also be bad to them, and the troopers will just let the KKK get off free.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one example of many, but it's a pretty horrible thing that this evil empire does.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought we could talk about that for a bit. Oh, wait, did I say uniformed troopers? I meant Nazis? Wait, did I say Nazis? I meant cops. Oh, did I say Wolfenstein? I meant modern day America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't you tell them what we're really talking about?
We're talking about current events, in a way. We're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and the important things that are happening right now in America.
Now, this is a media podcast. We tend to talk about, video games, shows, anime, just art in general. And so talking about this political movement that's currently going on right now might seem like it's out of our field of what we're covering. But we maintain that it's important to remember that media and art do not exist in a vacuum.
They are affected by and continually analyzed from a perspective, an outside perspective.
And just like we couldn't talk about anything without bringing up the coronavirus pandemic, we also weren't going to be able to avoid bringing up the rebellions that are going on right now.
Mm-hmm, because at the end of the day, we're people too. And we're aware of what's going on, and
might as well try to do it some justice.
Yep.
And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it should be stated that neither of us are black.
Yes. So if you're looking for primary sources on all of this, we'll have some resources in the description. Listen to black voices first.
Right. But it's still important to be an ally. Mm-hmm. But we're just not going to try to speak over anyone that has more firsthand experience of this subject.
Yeah, absolutely. First things first is listen to black people about what's going on.
And for what it's worth, I'm white.
Mm-hmm. I'm not. I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm Latina.
Right. So you're still a person of color, and I believe your opinion is valid. But because of the way colorism in America works, black people have it worse. I think that's fair to say, right?
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
In this specific instance, there is no, we're not going to play Oppression Olympics, but it's obvious it's obvious that black people are the ones that are targeted.
I mean, it's why it's called Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
But the issue of police brutality is one that affects us all, even if to different degrees. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's so many white allies like myself.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that the police started, at least in America, I'm sure you could go into the history of the UK or whatever, and there's different things, but in America, the police started as slave catchers. And so from the ground up, it is a racist and violent organization designed to protect property and nothing else.
But Kira, they were just cops trying to protect the property.
The property was people.
Yeah.
People were considered property back then.
I was trying to set you up for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of disclaimers out of the way. So we wanted to talk about what's going on, the issues and whatnot. We don't have an exact idea of the demographic of our listeners because we don't have exactly that many. Mm-hmm. But, I think there's a few hundred of you out there.
Maybe.
We have it split between different platforms, so.
I guess. I think maybe like 200 max.
Well, it depends. We don't know how many of them are repeat viewers. It's not like we have each viewer tagged. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. So probably even less than that.
No. I mean, it's like we could have people that listen to only certain episodes.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right.
Yeah.
I would argue our fans are probably split 50-50 between people that call themselves progressive and people that love Call of Duty.
And yes, that is mutually exclusive.
No, it's not, okay? I get you think it's funny to say so, but it doesn't have to be, okay?
I know. I'm just joking.
And look, I know I'm not the biggest Call of Duty fan anymore. And I did kind of leave that behind at the same time I became progressive. But part of me will always still have an appreciation for Call of Duty Zombies, okay?
I mean, yeah, we still occasionally play it together.
The old ones, though.
Yeah.
So there's probably going to be a fair number of people listening to this that are already on board with Black Lives Matter. Great. Stay tuned. Or not. Go out there. Do stuff. But
we'll have resources in the description for what you can do.
Yes. But we believe there's probably a fair number of people listening to this that would describe themselves as apolitical, which is effectively saying you are a centrist, that you don't have any effect on politics, that you try not to side one way or the other, i.e. you're in the center. However, where the center lies depends on what country you are in and what the polls are. America is a duopoly, where you have two parties always.
Is duopoly even a word?
I believe it is, actually. It's like when you say that you have a monopoly, but it's two.
Okay.
Maybe a duoligarchy is a better word.
I don't know.
But where we essentially just have a choice between two powers that be. Mm-hmm. And one of them is far right wing, and the other one is center right wing. Mm-hmm. We often treat the center right wing as if they're on the left, but if you look outside of America, you'll realize how laughable that is.
Yep. Get some perspective.
Right. So if you are apolitical in America, you are saying you are a centrist, i.e. you are saying you are somewhere between the center right and the far right.
Yep.
This is also known as neoliberalism. Mm-hmm. All of you apolitical people, you are neoliberals. You are by definition right-wing.
At least in America.
At least that's your effect on politics, because I myself was in that position once. Mm-hmm. And I didn't consider myself identifying with a side. There's this desire that I think comes to white people and men and people that are in the norm, so to speak, to just try to stay out of it. It's complicated, messy, makes you feel bad. You don't want to mess with it, right? Mm-hmm. Or you've been fed lies, like I was also. So apolitical people, I think they're similar to also liberals, which is, basically one step left of neoliberals, where they don't so much identify it as they just happen to be it, because they haven't quite thought out their positions. If they have, they might be further right-wing. Right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Possibly. What were you going to say?
Basically, if you are apolitical, that means you're okay with the status quo, which is why you're more right.
Right. You haven't gotten around to actually questioning what's wrong with the world. And if you can look at the world and you don't see anything wrong with it, you're kind of burying your head in the sand.
Yep.
And I think that's what these rebellions that currently are going on is really showing us, that there's something that's wrong with the world, and people are violently fighting to suppress that. A rebellion is just a revealing of a cancer that has already been there, that is gnawing away at our society.
And America is stage 4, baby.
And it's telling that a lot of the talk has been about law and order, which essentially translates to just pretend everything's okay, even when it's not. Because if you were really addressing, if you're addressing this, analogy cancer, then you would treat it. You would do what you need to do to make the cancer become benign, and then dissipate. Instead, what we're doing is sending in police to brutalize protesters, to try to make them go home and go away and stop speaking. We're essentially doing chemotherapy as opposed to an actual cancer cure, to keep the analogy going.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know how that works in the analogy, but I'll go with it. I also want to say that if you can stick your head in the sand, if you can say you're apolitical, then you're privileged, because a lot of people, mainly Black people, can't be apolitical. They cannot stick their head in the sand, because you know what happens when they stick their head in the sand? They go out there and get shot by a police officer.
And I mean, there are countless videos showing police brutality at these anti-police brutality protests. And it is horrifying. I've seen so many things. I saw one where this Black couple was just driving in their car down a road that happened to be adjacent to a protest. They weren't even participating. Cops broke their windows and yanked them out of the car and arrested them.
Wow. And by the way, tear gas is literally against the Geneva Convention. It's considered a chemical weapon.
Oh, right, but the Geneva Conventions only applies to countries going at war with each other. It does not apply.
It's fine to use on your own citizens.
Wow. Also, doesn't Syria gas their own citizens? I thought we were supposed to be better than the fascist state of Syria.
Apparently not.
Wow.
Also, I don't know if anyone has seen a picture of a rubber bullet or knows how they're supposed to be used. They're supposed to be shot at the ground and ricochet to disperse the force and not be as harmful. Cops are literally shooting them into people's faces.
Right, because you're supposed to deflect at least half of the force by ricocheting it, right? It's like breaking your fall. And they're just not doing that.
And they're not even entirely made of rubber. It is a metal core with rubber around it.
Okay, so we've been kind of just talking about, the larger political landscape, right? We might want to talk about these protests and how they came about. Do you want to do that? Or
I guess I could talk about it. To be honest,
I can do it if you want.
No, I'll talk about it.
Okay.
To be honest, this has been a thing in America for an extremely long time, but only recently has it hit a fever pitch to the point where people are out in the streets daily.
I mean, I think it also helps that the U.S. is currently having the highest unemployment rate. that it has seen in a very long time because of the pandemic.
Oh my God, yeah, you're right. Like, seriously, this is literally just the straw that broke the camel's back as far as what's wrong with America.
Yep. I mean, it's police that evict you when you can't make rent. So, common enemy.
Yep. So basically, this entire thing started in, is it Minneapolis?
Yes.
In Minneapolis.
Well, I guess the straw that you referenced.
Yes, the straw. I'm explaining the straw.
Yeah.
The straw that broke the camel's back was...
Which is I don't like that analogy.
Yeah, okay. In Minneapolis, a black man named George Floyd went into a store, bought something, paid with a $20 bill. The cashier thought it was fake because he was racist and thought a black man would have a fake bill. And he called the cops on George Floyd. They arrested him, leaned on his neck.
Oh, wait. We should have said this earlier. This episode's explicit.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
The bill wasn't even fake, by the way. And even if it was, what percentage chance do you think it was that George Floyd made that bill himself?
Right. Before anyone leaves a comment saying like, "Oh, but this was bad. This person did bad thing. The looting, violent." What you then have to explain after anything is why that deserves death.
Yep.
I'll wait. Oh wow, some of you are actually going to do it, aren't you? No, not our listeners. Our listeners are better than that.
Hopefully. But yeah, first of all, no crime like that deserves immediate death for punishment. That's execution in the street.
Yeah, it's not even just execution, it's execution without trial. Even if you believed in capital punishment, it was like, oh yeah, the state can straight up murder you. You're at least supposed to go through the procedure of a court.
It is literally in our Constitution that people are guaranteed due process.
Yes, except our Constitution assumed black people weren't people.
Well, yes, but...
And many people still do.
Yeah, I know.
Even if they claim they're not racist, you claim like, oh, I have a black friend. Okay. Are you racist enough to think your black friend speaks for all black people?
Mm-hmm. Also, it's always, I have a black friend, so I'm not racist. And now I have a black friend, so I fight the systemic racism inherent in our society. Anyway, so yeah, what happened is they thought it was a counterfeit bill because they're racist and assumed it. And he was arrested. And when they arrested him, the officers held him down. He was cuffed on the ground, not resisting. Completely just cuffed on the ground.
Several officers holding him down.
And they kneeled on his neck for almost 9 minutes. It was like 8 minutes, 46 seconds.
Kneeling on the neck of a person in custody is a tried method that police are perfectly allowed to employ on any suspect they want. It has been noted for decades to be a dangerous tactic that has been known to kill people before because your neck's important. Turns out that's where you breathe. Yeah,
it's literally an illegal way to restrain people because it kills them. That's how you kill someone.
No. It's perfectly legal.
Well, no.
Yes.
Well, technically, they're not supposed to do that. The police brutality means that they're going against what's technically on the books.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. No. It is perfectly legal for police to restrain people that way. That is the problem.
Really? I thought it was illegal that he used it.
It would be illegal if you did it, but not if you're a cop.
What? I thought they had regulations.
You thought cops had regulations. Look, I will look it up right now. Cop knee legal? Yeah, see, there's absolutely nothing illegal about it. We're looking at an article right now showing how This has been an issue for like 10 years with the Minneapolis police, with them doing it before. They were even sued once for it, but it was settled out of court. There is no law saying they can't do this. They just admitted it looked bad and that maybe we should have training about this. They have not had training about this.
Oh, I see. Great. So anyway, they literally kneeled on his neck for over 8 minutes. And he suffocated to death after he had no pulse. He was still on his neck for literally 2 full minutes. And when you sit there...
Wait, really?
Yeah, remember? We watched...
He went unconscious, but he was only pronounced dead later.
Yeah, he was pronounced dead later. Doesn't mean he had a pulse.
Okay.
Yeah. So... This was obviously an egregious... This was murder. A police officer murdered a black man for the possibility that he had a counterfeit $20 bill. And I want you to sit with that.
And all of the other officers either helped or watched.
Yeah.
There were 4 in total.
There were no good cops there to stop them from doing this, because good cops sit and stand by and let the bad cops do what they want to do, or they get fired for preventing it.
If there's one bad if there's one bad cop, only one bad apple, so to speak, and there's 999 cops that unite behind that bad cop and don't let him get fired, don't let him see accountability.
Then you have 1,000 bad cops.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But this is what sparked...
Oh, by the way, can I say something? The comparison to Nazis is really apparent to me.
Yeah, because you didn't see any cops using riot gear or tear gas on the white protesters who wanted the state to open back up for the economy.
But I think particularly because...
And they were armed.
Maybe not all the Nazis were bad guys. I'm sure there were good Nazis. No, there weren't.
Mm-hmm, because they were still complicit in a system that allowed Nazis.
And some people have argued, just like how in Buffalo recently, several officers recently murdered a 75-year-old white man who was protesting. Well, he's not technically dead yet, but if he's not murdered, he at least has severe brain injury. Mm-hmm. Still fatally wounded, let's say that. Mm-hmm. When they were suspended, not fired, not arrested, for this near murder, the entire riot squad resigned in protest, hiding behind this guy because they didn't think he should be accountable, right? Mm-hmm. And do you know why they said that?
Why?
They were just following orders. They shouldn't have gotten suspended for just following orders. You might recognize that as the Nuremberg Defense, which is the defense that the Nazis used at the Nuremberg war crime trials after World War II to defend their heinous actions. It's the I was just following orders defense. The United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, probably some other countries, the Allied powers, decided the Nuremberg Defense was crap. Mm-hmm. Just following orders is not good enough.
Because this is why the entire police system is wrong, because just following orders means you kill people.
And this is what people mean when they say, like, all cops are bad, or...
No. It's specifically all cops are bastards. And you know why? Because bastards means a corruption of something. And they have corrupted the idea of communities looking out for each other.
That's a really good point. But there's a misinterpretation a lot of people have about all cops. And the answer is just, we quite frankly don't care if there is a good cop or a nice cop. Because it's by being a cop that you are not good or nice.
Exactly. Just get another job.
Right. Now, there are some criticisms of that. A lot of people are like, you want to get rid of cops, so you want anarchy. Now, putting aside anarchist is its own philosophy, and is often smeared. It's important to recognize that just because you think we should get rid of cops doesn't mean you don't think we should replace it with something that works far better and more efficiently.
Yeah, which is communities looking out for each other and policing, I hate to use that term, themselves.
Well, I really don't think you need to use that term. You don't need a police force. Policing is only done by an authoritarian state trying to keep what they deem to be order of all kinds. If you're worried about crime, you can have investigators. If you're worried about, violence, you might have some people trained to de-escalate violence. If you're feeling suicidal, you have a department that's trained to have therapists for those.
Mental health professionals.
Yes. If someone calls because they were raped, you don't call a beat cop to help you with that. What are they going to do? Beat you? No. You call someone who's trained to handle rape cases.
A crisis.
There's been a murder.
Worker.
You call an investigator.
Yeah.
There's a reason the DMV is a separate institution from the IRS. And I understand people are like, oh, but you want to do more bureaucracy? I understand government isn't great. But don't we champion having a separation of powers? Don't we champion that, if we're going to be ruled by a government class, that at least they're not all unified in one authoritarian force? At least you disperse it and stratify the power.
And are able to hold them accountable.
And they can hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
The whole problem with the reason why our government's getting so horrible is because the two-party system inherently undermines the separation of powers that Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidency are supposed to have.
Yeah.
It means that all three can be puppeted by one party. That's not to say things would be perfect without that corruption, but it would be better.
There's a reason Washington didn't want parties.
And I think what you're saying about a self-defense force is very good. I mean, that's something like the autonomous region of northeastern Syria has, where they have members of their own community with guns defending their own community. Most police officers in most of these big cities where these rebellions are happening do not live in the cities.
No.
The majority of Portland's police lives in the suburbs, not in Portland. They live around it, next to it, but not in it. They are literally an invading force that can go home and sleep at night because they don't have to sleep in the area they conquered. Also, we have concentration camps. That's still a thing.
Yep.
It's not directly related to the police, but ICE may as well be the police. They're just the ones that police the brown people. Well, the non-citizen brown people. Sorry.
We got so far. We were trying to talk about how George Floyd started the protest.
I'm sorry. That was largely my fault. I mean, we basically told the story, right?
Yeah.
From there, people have taken up George Floyd as an icon, as a rallying cry. And a lot of people try to talk about how it's so weird that all these people care so much for one person, just one guy. Did you know he was actually a bad guy? He may have done drugs. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm sick of people trying to justify this crap because what you're justifying
is execution.
Is heinous.
Yeah.
Because cops beat and mace you, and people are like, "Oh, that's what happens when you flip them the finger and you're disrespectful to them," and we think that's normal, and it's like, what? What?
I want to put it in perspective. I don't care how nice George was. From all indications, it seems like he was a nice person who did not deserve murder. And I wish he had survived. I wish he had not gone through this. But, to put it in perspective, imagine he had literally stabbed an officer in the face stabbed the officer until he died. And maybe that happened moments before the video turned on and we just didn't see that. But the officers report that that's what happened. It's just the truth. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
It still would not justify the officers executing him once he has been caught. Because if he had literally murdered an officer right beforehand, and they managed to capture him and pin him down on the ground, don't you expect our officers to be better than the criminals? Wouldn't you expect the officer to not murder him in cold blood right there?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you detain him and have him go through court? So I don't want to hear crap about whether George was a good or bad person, because it doesn't matter.
Because no matter what crime you supposedly committed, no matter how bad a person you supposedly were, nothing justifies being executed on the spot.
Yeah, and then I think we've made our point well. Some people might say, okay, this was just a one-off incident, though.
I have a long list of names that would refute that claim immediately.
Mm-hmm. And, you might say, like, well, you've just cherry-picked that.
In that case, these are just the ones we know about that were reported in the news. If you want, I'll go through police records and find so many people that died of excessive force that no one talked about.
At a certain point, you can show so many individual pieces of evidence, and I'm willing to bet you could show 90% of all footage, and they would still be like, but what about the remaining 10%?
Mm-hmm.
If that works for individual cases where you see a cop killing someone, and you're like, well, we didn't see the why. Do you need to?
No, you don't, because cops aren't supposed to kill people.
And do you think the same people using that bad faith argument would not also apply it to the grand scale of things?
Mm-hmm.
If you saw 90% of officers doing horrible war crimes, do you think they'd not go, oh, but what about the remaining 10%? We don't know that they weren't all good angels. Please.
It doesn't matter.
At a certain point, statistically, you have a sample size that is representative of the majority.
Yep.
And we're getting a larger sample every day with these rebellions.
Absolutely.
I don't like calling them riots. People call them riots to demean the protesters. If you're going to call it a riot, at least have the decency to call it a police riot. Because that's a specific term that means the police are the instigators.
Which they are. There are so many videos where people are literally just peacefully protesting.
And they get fired upon by the police.
Yep.
It looks like a war zone in some of these videos.
Mm-hmm. And that's not even to talk about.
Well, no. Sorry, I take that back. A war zone usually has two sides fighting.
Yep. It looks like a massacre is what it looks like. It looks like these police are coming in here and trying to massacre these people. And just because there aren't as many of them dead as the police would like, or whatever you want to say about, there has to be a certain amount of deaths, doesn't mean that they still aren't an invading force that's attacking these peaceful people.
But Kira, looters.
If one looter can can make the entire political movement and all the peaceful protesters disingenuous, then what does it say about the one cop who leaned on George Floyd's neck?
Right, you're not willing to apply that same level of certainty, of making sure that everyone's innocent or guilty equally to both sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
One good cop means they're all good. One bad looter means they're all bad. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, about looting, there's so much to discuss with that. First of all, I want to point out that if you call yourself a gamer and you have a problem with looting, you might want to look at yourself a bit more. How often do we call killing enemies and then taking what they have looting? Going into a cave, breaking all the vases of someone's house. Gamers are synthetic looters.
I mean, yeah, I never thought of it like that, but you're right.
And I'm saying this as someone that loves playing Fallout and picks up every piece of scrap I can find. Right?
Yeah.
I only point that out to mention the hypocrisy. Because you know what? If you've done a game like that, I'm calling you a looter. You know, like, oh, it's just a game. I didn't do it for real life. Like, okay, sure. But you were simulating looting. I'm calling you a simulated looter. And you might say, oh, no, though. It was different. Even within the world of my simulation, of my game, I was the good guy. I didn't do that. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Interesting. You make those justifications for yourself. Do you not think other people do the same thing?
Mm-hmm. And this is all ignoring the fact that, but by the way, I'm sorry that this is somehow controversial statement in America. Property is not as important as human lives. Human lives are more important than property. So I don't give a fuck. They can loot as much as they want. In a capitalist system, that's civil disobedience.
And don't bring up the small business owners when the majority of targets are literally giant corporations.
Yep.
In fact, many protesters have specifically tried to avoid the small businesses getting hit. Mm-hmm. Now they have been hit in the crossfire, and that's not great. And no one wants that.
Yeah, and
few people want that.
I want to bring up that there has been video evidence and proof of undercover cops being the ones to start the looting, especially at underprivileged housing and underprivileged and like small businesses.
And it's important to keep that in mind, but also understand that it is going to be a byproduct of continued protests, whether it's fair play or not.
Yep.
And like you said, it doesn't matter because, again, lives are more important. People are going to keep getting killed from police brutality until we do something. And that's what these protests are supposed to accomplish. I mean, please, apolitical people, hello. Hear me out, because I used to be with you. I would wonder, how could people during the civil rights movement and before that, how could they justify what they're doing? It's so wrong. It's racist. Slavery? Jim Crow? Lack of civil rights? What were the white people doing? How did they reconcile that? It's just such evil. And I grew up under the misconception that evil had been extinguished. Because you have a very naive of good and evil when you're growing up, at least in my culture, our culture, where we think that these white people thought of themselves as evil. They never did. They made the same justifications we make now. They say like, oh, well, I don't want too much too fast. Or like, aren't we already equal? If you give them more rights, then we're going to be oppressed.
Or I would listen to them if they were more peaceful.
And no peaceful they are is ever enough. I saw one point online that was really well made where they're like, we just want you to be peaceful protesters. And you see Colin Kaepernick kneeling. No, not like that. You see another person doing a protest. No, not like that. And another. And it just kept going.
Because you don't want any protest.
Yeah, it's not about peaceful.
You just want to be comfortable. You don't want people protesting. When Martin Luther King Jr., who was it Jr.? I forget. When he died, he was literally the most hated man in America. And he was the most peaceful protester there ever was in the civil rights movement.
I also think it's important to mention that the way we treat Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in our society, in our classrooms, especially in our corporations, like Diversity Day and crap like that, is extremely racist and undermines everything he fought for because they use the man as a token. A token to prove that racism has been vanquished. Don't look to see how much more we are perpetuating. And if you try to say something, we're not literally lynching you, so be quiet. And I think it's also important to mention, Mlk was a Democratic Socialist. You don't hear about that very often now, do you?
No. He also literally said that riots were the language of the unheard, and that we have to look at what America isn't hearing.
And I think it's important to also consider that he also said when he was in jail, he was writing a letter, and it says something to the effect, I don't have it memorized word for word, but he said, I have grown to fear that the great enemy of black people is not the Ku Klux Klan member or the whatever the other racist group was. It is instead the white moderate. And he goes on to explain who the white moderate is. It's liberals, apolitical people, neoliberals, conservatives even. Although more and more conservatives are turning fascist these days. So apolitical people listening to this, MLK would hate you. Because there's a certain loathing for people that willingly sit by and perpetuate the system than the ones that oppose it. Obviously, the ones that are opposing it, the KKK, the police, obviously they are bad. I even saw a picture of one Vegas cop who literally had an SS tattoo. Nazi.
Wow.
Obviously, they're bad. Probably worse. But they can only exist with the moderate to prop them up.
I think he said something about like who's their preference, their idea of peace
And law and order.
Sorry, what?
He mentioned law.
Oh, okay.
Well, you're talking about the quote where he says, they would prefer a negative peace absent of strain or tenseness, as opposed to a positive peace present with justice. Something like that.
Yeah.
I think I got half the words right.
He was basically saying that the people who prefer to not have to deal with this, to ignore it, to stick their head in the sand, are preferring that over actual justice, over actual equality. And that's awful.
And you know what? I've been addressing a lot of the apolitical right-leaning people. But even you liberals, if you support like the Democratic Party or whatever.
Yeah, even the people who are just like, well, they're not peaceful enough for crap like that. Minneapolis has almost a totally democratic government. They are part of the problem. This is not a party issue. We are a duopoly, and both parties hate black people. Just because one party had a black man as president doesn't change that. Even he kind of hated black people, because we went through this earlier in Ferguson during his presidency, and he was bad too. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, and to those liberal people, you know, the people who say, hey, well, it's a shame that this person was brutally murdered by police, but the looting and stuff has to stop. Try flipping that. It's a shame that some property was destroyed, but the murder of innocent people by police has to stop. It's about priorities.
Definitely. Can I go back to talking about looting?
Sure.
Because I really liked the looting to gamer example I came up with. And I think it's important because people have reasons for looting. You might have a reason for looting in your game. And you know what? You might be on a quest to save the world. So you justify it. And I'm not even saying you're wrong to justify it. It's actually exactly kind of the opposite of what I'm saying. I actually don't think looting is a big deal at all. Like, maybe it'd be preferable to not have looting, but given the circumstances, people have justifications for why it's necessary. Like, maybe those giant corporations shouldn't exist, so people are morally opposed to them. But also, if you are literally going from a state of supposed law and order to a state of chaos or anarchy, you need a way to sustain yourself. That includes picking over the carcass of the previous regime that has been oppressing you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, you in Fallout, in the post-apocalypse, you're stealing from the state, from corporations. You pick up junk everywhere you can find it. You just don't care because that's the fallen regime. It's fair picking. Scavenging is a profession in the Fallout universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think some people kind of use as a crutch that, like, well, all those people died hundreds of years ago. Why is that a necessary part of your critique? We have here looting. Yeah, the people might still be alive, but you're going to cry about Target losing a Target? They're going to be fine.
They literally released a statement that said that they're fine. They're fine. They don't need people defending them.
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't want Target on our side. So yeah, I honestly really don't have a problem with looting. Don't loot individual people. Don't loot small businesses. That's not cool. But that's not really the issue here. And focusing on that is actually doing a huge disservice with your selective viewership. It's not really much different than the media who's glorifying that looting, kind of like they did with Hurricane Katrina, even though there was actually remarkably little looting during Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, when we talk about poor people stealing things, it's called looting. But when the police do it, it's called asset forfeiture, civil forfeiture.
Yeah.
Something
as if the police doesn't steal crap from the people they police constantly.
It's actually a statistic now that police, on average, like every year, steal more from poor people through civil forfeiture than burglary at all.
Yep. So, what are you saying about that?
So, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm actually anti-looting now. We just got to make sure we really look at what looting is. Sure, let's lock up all the protester looters. But if you're going to do that, you got to lock up the cops too. I'm kind of joking about that, but
yeah, so if you will justify police saying they stop crime, the police commit more crime than they stop.
And this is crime by what their definition is. I don't necessarily agree with their definition. Actually, I'm pretty sure I don't disagree. I said I really don't care about the looting. But under their own definition, they should be arrested, the cops. Mm-hmm. But, their definition has a little asterisk that says not when we do it. Mm-hmm. Convenient.
Yep.
And I should mention that the current laws set in place to make civil what was it?
Civil forfeiture.
Yeah, to make civil forfeiture as prevalent as it is. Do you know who came up with those laws?
Who?
Joe Biden.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I did not know that.
During the Reagan administration, he advocated more than anyone else to get Reagan, to pass laws to enable Reagan to push for this tough on crime mentality, bringing about the concept of civil forfeiture. Previously, cops could only take money that was used in the illicit transaction. He supported they should be allowed to take everything. His words, everything.
Are you kidding me? This is why we say all cops are bastards.
Again, it's more about policing. It's about the system of the police, not the individual cops. I don't care how nice your grandpa cop is. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Let's be real. If your grandpa cop was really that nice, he would have quit. Mm-hmm. Or he would have advocated for structural reform within the police agency, at which point he would have been fired.
Mm-hmm. Because... And this is another thing. If you can understand why, for example, pedophiles become teachers or babysitters or something to do with kids because it gives them access to kids.
Yeah, they seek out an avenue to perpetrate their propensity for violence on their chosen subject.
Uh-huh. Then you can understand why the cops are full of white supremacists because it gives them an avenue for perpetuating violence against Black people.
40% of police have been reported to commit domestic abuse on their families.
And that's why there isn't a law against people committing domestic abuse having guns. Because then 40% of cops wouldn't be able to carry a gun.
And you know what? Any liberals listening to this, you might not like this. But apolitical people, you might actually enjoy this. So we're going to say this for you. We're actually not anti-gun.
No, we aren't.
In fact, we own a gun. We don't have an issue with guns. We have an issue with the state pointing guns at us.
Mm-hmm.
If you're actually one of those people that champions the Second Amendment like it's a part of the Bible, isn't the whole point of having the guns to arm yourself against the state? Doesn't that mean if you're a champion of the Second Amendment that you are prepared to shoot a cop if necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't you also be anti-cop or anti-police? By having a gun, you're essentially saying that you believe in a community self-defense force. Obviously, we can organize it and not just rely on random people with guns. Maybe your community could, vote on a defense force, kind of like northeastern Syria did, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point.
So we've been just going on so many different tangents.
Yep.
Now, there's one specific tangent we haven't done that I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
How this relates to media and video games and whatnot.
Okay.
There's so many times in video games where you're just expected to trust the police officers or the state or the authority.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working on this Fallout side project for a while. And there's so many times when you're just expected in a quest or something to side with the good guys. And when you look at them, you're like, you're not really the good guys. You're just in the blue uniforms.
Yep.
You're just the police.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but look back at when we played Fallout 4 and be like, maybe that's why I hated the Minutemen so much. I guess they were kind of revolutionary, but they didn't stand for anything. And anyway, there's just so many times like Call of Duty where you're just supposed to be like, be a soldier, obey orders, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I have a bit of sympathy for soldiers. Because I feel the way you get conscripted is a lot less consensual as a soldier.
Yeah. Do you realize the statistics on why people go into the military?
Oh, like poverty and whatnot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So literally, they perpetuate this system because it literally gives them soldiers. That's what the state does.
But it's also a lot harder to quit as a soldier than as a police officer.
Well, yeah, true.
So with soldiers, I have a bit of sympathy. And more importantly, I think it's easier probably to get soldiers to see right from wrong than it is police officers. Because soldiers have genuine training.
Yeah,
police officers think they're in a war zone when they're just a beat cop.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just something I've been noticing. What else? Anything about video games or media you can think of?
Why are guards and cops and media always portrayed as such good people? I mean,
you know what
to
I'm
be
sick
fair,
of?
you do have a decent portrayal of corruption and stuff sometimes.
Sometimes, and when that happens, it's much appreciated because it's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think Person of Interest comes to mind. Remember that TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a huge corrupt cop narrative.
Yeah, even in LA Noire, the video game, okay, the main character you played was supposed to be the good cop, but everyone.
Doesn't he end up quitting though at the end?
No, he.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, spoilers.
Anyway, so I wanted to also mention that something that annoys me is the portrayal of black cops, specifically black female cops.
Mm-hmm.
This often seems to me as a way of excusing cops.
Mm-hmm.
It's by saying like, oh, no, they're not racist. See, he's part of the minority. As if tokenism isn't a thing we've already discussed this episode.
Yeah.
We literally talked about how the president was tokenized. MLK was tokenized.
Mm-hmm.
And by tokenized, we basically mean you have a person of color who's still racist or still perpetuates racism, even if they themselves aren't racist.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, with MLK, I don't think MLK was racist. But I do think
Obviously.
I think people use his memory in that way.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, want to make that distinction. And I see this a lot in media. I mean, I don't want to keep up bringing Fallout, but Bethesda, the game company, has a huge history of making all of their bad guys people of color. And a lot of the times, these bad guys are slavers. So they make the big slave leader, like the leader of all who owns people as chattel, they make him a person of color, usually black, as a way of saying that this is post-racial slavery. As if Obama being president made the country post-racial.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Fallout 3. It's all over Fallout 3.
Eulogy Jones is literally such a racist stereotype of a character.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an over 10-year-old game, but I mean, is Fallout 76 any better? I mean, they only just added quests, so I don't know.
Mm.
All right, let's get off of media, or at least off of Fallout specifically.
Oh, you mean they just added NPCs?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a problem the way we portray this. I can't help but think people are going to look back at this time the same way we look back at the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm. And that's
however,
another thing. Sorry, what?
You want me to continue, or
What were you going to say?
However, I have to simultaneously hold that with the idea that the way we look back at the civil rights era was garbage.
Yeah, I was going to say, literally, how do you think we got to where we are today? Rioting. The Civil Rights Act was only passed after...
rebelling, and people called it rioting.
Yeah, rebelling. The Stonewall, the first Pride was a police riot.
I really wish, some of these, Antifa protesters would have, signs, where they say stuff like, riots got you the weekend. Let's see what else we can get. Because, I mean, people forget, we literally didn't have a weekend until labor rights rioted for it.
Yep. The Boston Tea Party was, one of the first riots.
I mean, again, the British Empire called it a riot.
Yeah.
We called it a rebellion.
Mm-hmm. So, the Tea Party, the civil rights riots, Stonewall, we never get change. We never get progress.
Unless we demand it.
Unless we demand it. Because they won't listen otherwise.
And I don't want to hear this stuff about violence, because literally standing in a street is enough violence for a police to shoot you.
Yep.
So you don't need to go out there and literally attack the police and burn things down, even if you want to. Because just standing there is enough.
Mm-hmm. They'll attack you on sight.
Oh, by the way,
are hostile NPCs.
By the way, we might lose our advertisers on this episode, but we don't have any, so deal with it.
Yep.
I don't know. YouTube might hate it.
Whatever.
Yeah. How much you want to bet we get demonetized? Yay.
I would probably win that.
Anything else?
We are going to have resources in the description for what you can do to help, including advice on protesting, petitions to sign, people to call, text, resources for you to learn about racism and learn about what's going on, all of that.
And if you're still doubtful, if you've gotten this far, please just hear me out. You know the Rosa Parks story where she sat on a bus or whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
The bus boycotts during the civil rights era? Early, that was the 50s, right? Yeah. The bus boycotts lasted almost a full year. It wasn't quick. People had to demand it, and demand it for a long time for equality.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to make a difference, you need to go out there and protest. I honestly, you're going to link to petitions and, sign them, great.
No, there's
But-
also protest info.
Yeah.
There's
Protesting
literally-
is really where it's at right now.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you can find other ways to support. But there's literally protests in every single city. All you gotta do is go there and stand there. Be generally supportive. You standing there, even though you're not committing a crime, will be enough. Now, they might enact a curfew. A curfew is essentially a fascist rule that says you have to go home. You cannot have freedom of movement, but we're only going to apply it to half the full day so you don't realize it's overtly fascist. That's what a curfew is. Oh, and, be careful with the whole pandemic and everything. Wear masks and be safe.
Yep.
What else? If you're still doubtful that any of this is happening, please look up some videos. Like, videos of what's actually happening. You probably have problems with the media. I do too. The media is not showing everything. Look up individuals recording what they see. Because what they see is brutal. And often, the cops are trying to push away cameras, destroy cameras, arrest journalists, and get people to stop filming them. Because we would know none of this unless someone had filmed what happened. I've never liked iPhones. I thought they were kind of overrated. Smartphones. But it is undoubtable how much they have changed our society. And it makes you wonder, how much brutality was there when it wasn't being recorded? It's unconscionable. All right. I'm checking out. Take the floor, Kara.
Black Lives Matter. Now get out there and yell that at the cops. Bye.